Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com. This is a very short video showing how the New York Times creates completely fake climate stories. Since 1895, Bucyrus, Ohio has seen a sharp decline in the number of 90-degree days. Prior to 1960, they averaged about 25 days per year over 90 degrees Fahrenheit. But since 1960, they've only averaged about 11 days per year over 90 degrees. Let's take a look now at what the New York Times has to say about the climate of Bucyrus. As the world warms because of human-induced climate change, most of us can expect to see more days when temperatures hit 90 degrees Fahrenheit, 32 degrees Celsius or higher. See how your hometown has changed so far and how much hotter it may get. So I used their interface and entered Bucyrus, Ohio, and used their oldest date they would allow me to put in, which was 1920. And this is the message that came up. Our dataset goes back to 1960 when you were 40. Back then, the Bucyrus, Ohio area could expect about 10 days per year to reach at least 90 degrees. Well, that's interesting. Why does their dataset only go back to 1960 when there's data available back to 1895? And here's the graph which came out beginning in 1960 and ending in 2017, showing a small increase in the number of 90-degree days. And then the New York Times provided this lovely graph. By the end of the century, models show that there could be 35 of these very hot days. The likely range is between 19 and 54. Now let's compare the New York Times modeled graph with the actual graph of data from Bucyrus, Ohio. It's pretty easy to see why the New York Times hid the data before 1960 because it was much hotter there prior to 1960 and 90-degree days were far more common. The actual data shows that their model is worthless. The trend is in the opposite direction of what their model predicts. But by hiding the data before 1960, they can create the fake trend which they want people to see. The New York Times made it clear at the beginning of the article that they have an agenda to prove that there will be more 90-degree days because of human-induced climate change. And when the data didn't support their theory, they simply made up a fake story. This is not just a problem with Bucyrus, Ohio, because it's the same downward trend in the number of 90-degree days averaged out across the entire United States. The New York Times is pushing a fake story which doesn't work, so they hid the real data and replaced it with fake climate models which aren't supported by evidence. Toto has been pulling back the curtain on the climate scam for almost 16 years. You can visit him and his family on the web at realclimatescience.com.